Hey, so hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to Cornerstone Partners Webinar, our series which is focused on kind of being brave, being agile and being resilient. So, this whole series is focused on discussing a number of topics relevant to our community during these challenging times. So for those of you who have signed in again and you've been to one of our webinar sessions before, hi. Welcome back. It's really, really nice to see you. And for those of you who have joined us for the first time today, welcome. Really nice to have you here with us. I really hope you all enjoy today's webinar, which is focused on the fashion and e-commerce industry and breaking in and staying afloat. So, the fashion industry, whether we want to admit it or not, plays a significant role in how we feel about ourselves, and can give us that extra spring in our step to make sure we feel as tall as the Eiffel Tower sometimes. We are not defined by our clothes, but it does play a big role in how we feel a lot of the times. Right now we're in really strange times and we've not been able to freely roam around and, let alone just shop, and go, roam around freely and be, go out and wear the clothes of our choice, because ultimately there is really nowhere to go. There's no celebrations, there's nowhere for us to show our outfits off. So this global pandemic has in turn driven down sales for many retailers, especially those in the fashion industry. Many stores have been forced to shut down as a result, and and many businesses have had to close their doors permanently, or they're suffering significantly as a result of lack of sales and a decrease in demand. And in addition to this, there's a number of supply chain and logistical issues like causing issues and challenges around stock and production. So why are we here today? Many founders in our community are either in the e-commerce space or high street retailers, or if you aren't there yet, many of you are aspiring to be. So keeping our webinar series focused on discussing topics that you care about and that are important to you, today we want to talk about fashion in the e-commerce space, in the hope that you take something meaningful or insightful or some sort of advice away from our amazing panelists who I'll introduce shortly. Or even if you don't operate in this space, we hope that you take something away from this session that will, you can apply to your lives and your business or your future businesses, and it will be able to help you in some way. So as mentioned, we have some amazing panelists here with us today who are here to share their experiences, their expertise, knowledge and guidance with you all. And yeah, I'll introduce them in just a little bit. But as mentioned, today you are joining Cornerstone Partners Webinar Series. So who are we? Who are Cornerstone? So for those of you who don't know, Cornerstone Partners are a 20-partner-strong angel investment network. We focus on investing in Black and diverse businesses here in the UK, and we offer both debt and equity investment. We are passionate about changing the status quo, changing the narrative, and creating spaces and access to capital for Black and diverse businesses here in the UK. At Cornerstone, we believe that there's two sides to invest in. So one side is, writing checks, financial checks, which is great. But the other side of investment is, the sharing of time, the sharing of knowledge, and the development of our community and our clients, which is why, these webinar series are particularly important to us. So if there is a topic that you want us to cover, please do reach out and let us know. We care about providing our community with information and knowledge that is relevant and needed to you. And who am I? So I'm the head of Cornerstone Partners Angel Network. My name is Chanel Answer. So that's my intro. So now really, really excited to do this webinar today, because a lot of the panelists are, good friends and family members to Cornerstone. So I kind of see today as an open and honest conversation, and hopefully we can bring all of you who have signed in today into this conversation. So in no particular order, I would like to introduce our panelists. So our first is Fioye Lanian. So Fioye is the co-founder of the world-renowned brand Virgo's Lounge. So they specialize in providing women's fashion apparel. So with over 10 years heading up the operations department of Virgo's Lounge, Fioye has been a part of the dual responsibility for bringing the brand to your doors, working within all facets of the business. She has strategically developed the logistics arm of the business, as well as ensuring that the brand maintains visibility amongst its many retailers such as ASOS, Zalando and Namshi.com. So I definitely know that most of the females and ladies joined in today are familiar with Virgo's Lounge, and we all have been and are still customers today. So really, really excited to have you here with us today, Fioye.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. Okay, next, would like to introduce you all to the one and only Nicholas Dex. Aside from the fact that he has amazing energy, Nicholas Dex is the founder and creator of Rip the Runway UK that we all know of. He is also the founder and creator of ODF Clothing and the Nicholas Kingsley Group. So ODF Clothing has had huge successes. You know, it's been featured in GQ magazine and the Metro newspaper. And alongside that, they also have a huge aromatherapy home fragrances line that has also been featured in Forbes. So doing amazing things. So we're really, really happy and honored and excited to have Nicholas join us today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next, like to introduce our very own Beryl Amar Aigbe. So Beryl not only is one of our partners at Cornerstone Partners, and she's amazing. She is also the founder of BSAS and Story Fashion retailer and wholesaler. So BSAS operates in Ghana, Nigeria, and it's been doing so for over 8 years. An extensive clientele. BSAS kind of focuses on female fashion, but has now expanded into babies, kids, and menswear. So, definitely killing it on the continent. In addition to this, Beryl also has a thriving store here in the heart of London. And it focuses on providing mid-range luxury fashion apparel for women. So really, really, really happy to have Beryl on our panel today. So thanks, Beryl. Great. Okay. Next, I would like to introduce Dennis Asamoah. So yeah, really excited to have Dennis on our panel. So Dennis is former investment banker before following his passion in entrepreneurship and moving to LA, where he has led to taking on a role as being the brand director of Velvier. Now, Velvier are a luxury men, I wouldn't even say men, because they do women's jackets as well, but they provide amazing jackets for men and women, very chic. And yeah, so within Dennis's remit, he focuses on bringing an authentic and effective strategies into collaborations and brand awareness to the group. In addition to this, Dennis is the founder of the Mr. Work Smarter lifestyle brand that focuses on providing motivational and inspirational coaching. So Dennis, it's really, really nice to have you here with us. Really pleased that you can join us.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, last but definitely not least, would like to introduce you all to Vera Boachi. So Vera, it's family to Cornerstone, but alongside that, she is an award-winning brand strategy and global wholesale development expert with over 12 years fashion industry experience, and she's worked with some amazing brands, ranging from Michael Kors, the Jimmy Choo, Versace, Self-Portrait, Tommy Hilfiger, you name it. Vera has worked with them. She's got a passion and speciality in launching new brands globally, as well as introducing international brands to the UK market and advising in wholesale channels. So she's helped, a number of emerging brands help get into the world's most renowned retailers such as Harrods, Selfridges, Net-a-Porter, Saks, Fifth Avenue, ASOS, the list can go on forever. But yeah, really, really nice to have you here with us, Vera, today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Awesome. Right. So, those of you who have joined us before will know, but if you don't, typically the discussion is centered around a number of discussion topics, which I'll take you through. The only thing I would like to say is towards the end of the webinar, we will reserve maybe 20 or 30 minutes to answer your questions. So as we are having our conversation and discussions and having a conversation amongst ourselves, please do send in any questions for the panelists, and we will make sure that your questions are answered at the end. Okay, awesome. Right, so the 4 topics that we are discussing today is learning how to select the right manufacturer for production. So, whether that's geographical region, cost, quantity, etc. Discussion point number 2 is understanding the difference in different content marketing strategies and ideas used by leading fashion brands to drive sales and create awareness for your brand. Really important. Point number 3 is how and when to engage a buyer to help you pitch your fashion product to a leading retailer. Really important. And the last topic is to learn different approaches and methods when negotiating terms with suppliers, retailers, and wholesalers. Okay, now let's officially kick off the conversation. So if we go back to discussion topic number 1, so learning how to select the right manufacturer for production, based on geographical region, cost, quantity, etc. I would like to, ask a question to Fee, shortening Fioye's name to Fee for this webinar. So Fee, I mean, Virgo's Lounge, world-renowned brand, you produce your own lines, dispersing them through major retailers. How did you go about, what was the process for you finding the right manufacturer?
Okay, so the business has been going on for about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started the business, it wasn't just, we found the supplier and that was it. It was a whole range of going through the motions with finding one supplier who would, because this was 10 years ago when the revolution of the internet just started.
Yeah.
And Alibaba, as we know it now, is not what it was then. It was sort of like, okay, what's this dodgy website? Who goes on there to look for anything? But we took the risk. We actually started producing in China.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, now I'll take you back. We started selling vintage dresses when the business first started. That was what we specialized in, vintage dresses. We would go to Hull, the city of Hull, to buy vintage dresses. We'll cut them up, change the buttons, and then we realized that ended and that was it. We couldn't produce the same thing over and over again because it's vintage. There's only one of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we would start looking for suppliers in different parts of the world. So our main focus was China. Of course, everybody went to China to look for production. So we started there and we realized that, okay, it wasn't really going as planned because we were not that familiar with the terrain of fashion and ordering stuff. So the last experience we had with China before now was ordering about 50 orange dresses and getting 50 green dresses sent to us for items that people had already paid for.
Yeah.
So that was embarrassing. And then we moved on to India, which is renowned for hand embellished handwork, hand beaded work. So that's pretty much where most of, if not 99% of our garments are made in India. We've only just started with the launch of our new brand, V-Label London, going into China again, but now with more experience, visiting the factory to, because then we didn't visit the factory and we didn't factor that in because we were both still in uni when we started the business. So going back to your question, we started off looking online, I think a lot of it was by chance, and the factory we found in India was not the first factory that we worked with. We worked with many other factories, but we found a fit with them. So there were a lot of factories that were giving us requirements to produce at least 1,000 units, at least 100 units, and so it varied. But this factory we found was just setting up, so they were very flexible, and we were able to negotiate getting the barest minimum in terms of quantity, but
Okay.
getting as much units as possible, as much styles as possible.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what we're going back to now, seeing how fashion is changing and how the industry is changing as a whole, where we find that it's not so much about the quantity of stock you have,
Yeah.
it's more about how wide your stock range is. So what sort of how much difference you have within your range. So rather than buying 100 units of one style, we would split it into 5 different styles within that color range, so that we can meet the minimum order quantity to get the best prices, because the more you order, everybody knows the less the cost is for a business. So finding our supplier was online. We did everything online, and then we visited them, and then they visit us once every single year. And that has been the case for the last 10 years. And we've worked with the same factory for the last 10 years. We have worked with other factories in between, but we've maintained the same relationship with our factory for the last 10 years.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so that's good to know. So, you've had a few trial and error situations, and it took a little while, and then you landed on.
I think it's actually essential that you have those experiences, because it does lead you in the direction of, okay, this is what I want to do. And I think a lot of, well, I'll speak for myself. When we first started, and speaking to friends who run their own fashion lines as well, is we sometimes tend to feel like we're sort of the second class citizen in the negotiation process, not knowing that the factory needs you just as much as you need them. So it's all about building relationships. Having the gift of the gab is something that I've had to develop over the last few years, where it's like, okay, you know what, I'm ordering 30 units of this style. Are you going to need 10 units of this style just to add on to it? And it's all about discussions and going back and forth with them and not stopping, because once they realize that you're persistent, I will find that there's a shift. Even with China, who's notorious for having really high minimum order quantities, I can tell you for a fact that we've gotten away with ordering 30 units from a factory in China. So it's all about discussions, it's all about going back and forth, it's all about, as a brand, letting them understand your vision as well. So I think that has it, and it wouldn't always work that way, which is why you would always probably need to keep looking for factories that might be more fitted to your business plan.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Fee. So, Nicholas, how about yourself with ODF? Have you had any challenges in getting to the point where you're comfortable with your manufacturers now?
Yeah. Very similar to Fee. I would definitely say that I've gone through a similar process. So we've been in the industry for a good 10 years. And coming at the beginning of the stage, it was very difficult because, we would have a concept and an idea, present it to the manufacturer, and what they would just say is, you have to get, no less than 2,000 of one style, one, look. So I was sitting there with dead stock, knowing who's going to wear this. And, when you get to the more, like, let's say the 400 item, you realize that, it's not balanced. Maybe there's a design that's not actually complementing the rest of the designs. So just like Fee said, I had to definitely realize that I was actually an asset to this agreement. And I would tell them what I wanted, because you need me as well as I need you. So definitely started negotiating, moved to different places like China, like Morocco, who are like great for leathers, Portugal, even went down to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, trying different places for material. And again, it was like less quantity and more quality.
Yeah.
And actually ended up working as part of our USP. So for example, this polo that I'm wearing, we would only release, let's say 200. Once it's sold out, it will come out in the next season, which really works well. And then we wanted to start adding some great attributes to the quality of it. So for example, making sure it was low on carbon, it was skin friendly, and eco-friendly as well, and present that to the manufacturer to make sure they actually meet our needs. So when you're buying into the clothes, it's not just you're buying clothes, it's also the added benefits that you can get with it. So I definitely agree that we are an asset, and it's important that you tell the manufacturer what you want. And, there is this great story out there that you have to do these big numbers in order to move, but that is a lie. You can negotiate, you can tell them what's possible, and it's important to shop around, because when you get different sort of feedback, you know what to present them with, and they know when you know your business. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, the key messages that I'm getting from both yourself, Nicholas, and Fee is, just understand the importance of your brand, and don't underestimate yourself and your worth, and take that to have strong conversations with these manufacturers, so that they can actually meet your needs. So that's fantastic advice. That's great. So Dennis, I'm shortening your name to D for the purpose of this webinar, because I like to shorten everyone's names. So D, I also kind of want to throw that to you, because I know you went through a process with regards to finding the right manufacturer for the coats for Belvier. What was that journey like?
Yeah, so first thing I want to make clear is that we're still babies. We're still fairly new to the market.
Yeah.
We started in 2019. And it was organic. It started when we went on a birthday trip. It was my birthday.
Yeah.
And with my mates, and basically we were actually making coats for ourselves. And just organically, by just making coats for ourselves, we fell in love with it. And we were like, wait. And then when we went back to London, a lot of our mates and family members were like, oh, I want something like this. And we were like, okay, cool, let's bring it to life. But one of the hardest things I would say is that when you're in a country where you're making a product, so we was in Vietnam, that's where we initially started our production. It's easier because they can do the measurement for you. You can go back and forth, you're on their face. You can tell them exactly what you want. If there's any issues, you can show them. The problem when you're working with someone that's miles away and you're back in London or in another place, when they send it, it's like they may show you even a picture and it won't look exactly, you may miss key things. So it comes and you're like, well, no. And you've spent all that money, you've wasted all that time. So those were some of the major difficulties. And especially when it's a complex style, if it's just a basic t-shirt, then you can get away with it. But if you're doing a coat which has different, like has a very unique style and you want it to look a certain way, you're gonna definitely struggle when you are working with someone all the way on another side of the pond. So for us, we realized that very early on, and then started to come closer to home in Europe, and that's made a big difference.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Dee. So, I want to move on to talking a bit about, your brand and understanding the different marketing strategies, because this is really, really important. I feel like a lot of people create fantastic products, and services, but where they haven't gotten their marketing strategy right, they've fallen short. So, I want to talk a little bit about, the different content marketing strategies and, ideas used by leading fashion brands to kind of drive sales and awareness for your brands. So I would like to start by asking Vera. So Vera, because you do a lot of work working with sort of the world's leading brands, and you work with emerging sort of fashion retailers and established brands. Do you have any sort of insight or views on the importance of creating a strong brand to drive sales with these big organizations?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because what I found is with all the brands that we've worked with, there's not one size that fits all. So I have found that there are certain brands that thrive off social media. So many brands nowadays do, but I've also seen where that's not necessarily the case, or not necessarily has to be the case. There's a brand that had hundreds of millions of turnover who only 2 years ago got on the social media platforms because their end consumer wasn't that way inclined. So I think it's just really understanding who your customer is and their shopping habits and really what they do and how do they communicate. Are they tech savvy or are they a brick and mortar kind of customer, and plug it into that. Yeah, as I said, there's not necessarily one size fits all, but once you know who your consumer is, one thing that I have found that brands that have a strong language, whether it's through their clothing, whether it's through how they communicate in their emails, once everything is aligned, they attract the right customers because there's not confusion about who they're targeting. So definitely know your customer, speak their language throughout all the areas of your business. And those are the brands, whether it's small or big, those are the brands that I've seen have thrived the most, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Vera. And Beryl, so, you know, your story is quite amazing. So you've had, you know, stores around the world running for about 8 years plus now. And I know quite recently you are moving online, but as Vera mentioned, for you, your model's been slightly different. It's been bricks and mortar focused. So, you know, how's it been for you building your brand and building your customer base?
I'd like to reinforce what Vera said. I think the key thing, and we learned that quite early, was sort of localizing, understanding your local market, no matter where you are. So obviously I started in Nigeria. Yeah. Huge market, so diverse. But we had to learn quite quickly what suits them, that market, because every country is different. So with Nigeria, for example, we went in, I started with it was like a side thing, you know. I moved there and I was wearing a brand that my friend owned, and I was every day getting compliments from people. So I just thought, I don't have a choice. Every time I needed clothes, I'd have to find someone that was coming to Nigeria or get my mum to ship something with DHL. You know, that was the problem I was facing. So I figured if I'm facing that, that means loads of people must be facing this. And I would go to the local boutiques there and I'd find sort of a Primark top, which I know is £2 and it'd be selling for 20. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I thought there was definitely a gap in this market. So I started with 20 dresses, bought them, sort of tested how it would go amongst friends and family, increased it to 50, then 100, and did it slowly. So I would learn what the environment wanted, what the clientele wanted. And then from that, it was just literally focusing on the different channels. So sort of Facebook, launching a website. So it was slow. And we're talking 8 years ago when the internet in Africa was almost non-existent, I'll call it. So people didn't know how to navigate online, So when we launched our website, I remember we launched it at midnight, and the next day we woke up with 2 orders. And I was so excited. I was so happy with 2 orders because I thought, okay, someone likes what we're doing, you know? And through the day we got more orders. But the next day, what we found was people were messaging us with, you've only got 10 dresses on your website. And it wasn't because we only had 10 dresses. It was because they didn't know how to use the website. So we now had to find a way to communicate how to do that to them. So this is why what Vera said is very true. You need to understand your market, because footfall to the brick and mortar store was great, but online people didn't understand. So how are we going to reach the rest of Nigeria if they didn't know how to do it? So we had to change our strategy in that way. And then going into Ghana, it was the same thing, because we had learnt so much. We now knew what to do to go into Ghana. And change it up to suit that market. But again, another very different environment. So we had to learn what worked there. And the same with London, you know, a Facebook budget of £500 gets you so many likes in Nigeria. It might get you 1 in London. So it's about finding out what works wherever you're going to operate and adapting to suit that market, basically.
Awesome. And how about yourself, Nicholas? So with ODF, you know, fantastic brand, had great, you know, it's had great coverage. What has your journey been to sort of create a strong brand awareness, or just a strong brand in general for ODF?
Yeah, so originally when we first started the brand, ODF, by the way, guys, it stands for One Diverse Fashion. And you know, so I grew up in South London, Mitcham to be exact, and I went to school in Wimbledon. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. So coming from Mitcham, I felt like the culture was so rich. But then going to Wimbledon, I felt like the lifestyle element was so rich as well. So I wanted to kind of just make the best of both worlds, if that makes sense. You know, I'll just be minding my business, you know, window shopping in Wimbledon Village. Say one day, you know, I'm gonna have my clothes in the shop. But there was so much inspiration I was taking from the area, the lifestyle, and people. But it wasn't until I actually went to school and I saw the diversity in different individuals is when I truly got the inspiration to set this brand up. But to kind of translate that into more of an ethos where we're all simplistic, but we're effective in our own ways. So it's not more about the clothes that we're wearing, it's more promoting who's wearing it and why you should wear it, if that makes sense. So before it was more about who wears the clothes, what celebrities wearing it, and I decided to focus more on the customers, the clientele, because I believe that the real algorithm is when you see people talking and when you see someone wearing something. So, you know, if someone was wearing a polo or a hat and you saw it in a barbecue party, you saw it in a barber shop, you saw it in a shopping center, you saw it in a friend's house, your next question is going to be, where can I get one of this from? And I realized that that was our strongest sort of unique selling point. As well as we're pushing the celebrities, let's also push the people. So we created an amazing campaign called Spotted in ODF. So anytime someone would wear our garment, whether that be a hat or clothing, we'll make sure we promote that. So that would kind of entice our customers to want to always, you know, promote it and feel proud when they're wearing our clothes. And the great thing about the brand as well is if you're as wise and old as, let's say, 80 years old, as an example, and as young as 6 months, you can wear it and not look out of place. It just looks like a classic brand. And that's the authenticity we're trying to show. So, I mean, we've had a great story. To give you an example is Ed Sheeran, the musician, was wearing our cap. And I actually didn't gift it to him. I didn't give it to him. He was actually in studio with another artist. And he actually mentioned to this artist, I keep seeing this hat around. What does it mean? What's the meaning behind it? And, this guy whose name is called Exo Man explained it to him and said, look, I'll give it to you. Just take it. Literally 2 days after that, he called me and told me that happened. I thought he was just joking. I saw it in a Metro newspaper. I saw him post it on Instagram. David Beckham commenting, and it just went all over the place. And that's the authenticity. It's just about connecting to the people. It's allowing people to know your story. And I'm very heavy on diversity. So when you see our campaigns, you're always seeing, you know, diverse cultures in the campaign to promote where I got the inspiration from and where I want to go. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me.
Awesome. No, I love that. No, that's great. And it's interesting to hear about the different journeys, like whether it be, you know, being organic or sort of having kind of targeted marketing strategies. So I would I'd like to then go to Fee, because Virgo's Lounge have a very strong brand. And it'll be interesting to kind of hear the journey, kind of whether it was intentional or whether it was quite organic, like Nicholas and ODF. How did it all come about?
I resonate so much with everything that Nicholas has said, because as a brand, we started out because we didn't have jobs and we needed jobs. So that's pretty much how the brand started, because we needed work. And from there, it just grew, and we were approached by, well, no, we're not approached. We kind of hounded Topshop to stock us. And that took 4 rejections before we actually got into Topshop. And, you know, a lot of people would run away after the first rejection. And that would be my first message, is just to keep trying. Because one thing that we have to realize as fashion brand owners is that buyers change within businesses a lot. So the first buyer who sees you might not be the second buyer who sees you, or the third buyer who sees you. So that was the experience we found we were having. We were getting the interest, but then there was always a stumbling block. And they do know what they're saying, the buyers. They understand the customers. That's why these stores have massive following and huge huge impacts in the world of fashion. So we found that, okay, the buyers always told us that you have a signature, but we just can't, we're just not blending it properly. So we have to go back to the drawing board, having absolutely no experience of running a business or fashion, because I studied HR and my sister studied psychology. So there was no connection there. So we had to go back and speak to people. And one of the key people that we spoke to was Arietta. I don't know if anyone knows her, but she worked for River Island for a very long time. And she really took us under her wings and gave us so much advice. And I think that was how the brand's signature sort of started developing. And it was just one dress, which is the Reina dress that we produced 10 years ago, and we still produce it now. And that
people wear it.
People still wear it. And it's come out in all the millions of colors. And we've always tried to move on from it, but we always come back to it. So at the beginning of the year, I was like, we're not doing it anymore. That's the end. We're not doing it anymore. And ASOS sent in an order for 1,000 units. And you're like, okay, well,
the people said we want it.
People said we want it. So you're kind of conflicted as a brand, but we recognize that is our cash cow. And we also recognize that when people see that dress, they recognize that it's a Virgo's Lounge dress. And I think for us, that has been our marketing strategy, is always knowing when people go out that that's a Virgo's Lounge dress. And that it's happened organically for us. We didn't plan for it to be that way, but with making that dress, I think we've made over 50,000 units of that dress in the last 10 years. It is our signature, and it has become our sort of marketing strategy. We use it for bridesmaids, we use it for brides. We use it, I made one for my daughter last year for my sister's wedding, and there was talk of having like a kids line. So it's been organic, and also in terms of the marketing side of things as well. Just like Nicholas said, it was we sent off. We were so desperate to be in the press, to have celebrities wearing our things, because we knew the impact of what it could do. And this was about 8 years ago. We sent off a whole bunch of items to Millie McIntosh, who was on Made in Chelsea at the time. And I remember this was a day before the royal wedding. And we sent it like at 4 o'clock, and by 7 p.m. she was wearing it, and she was pictured in it on the Daily Mail, and it was all over. And between that day and the Monday after, we had sold 600 units of that dress.
Love it.
Of a dress that had been sitting in the warehouse for months and hadn't sold, and it just took her to wear it. So it was that like eagerness to get the items out to her. And it was always like, what do we have to do right now, and what opportunities do you have right now? You have to strike while the iron's hot. And that's the one thing I've realized with running this brand, that you can't really say, okay, I'll send it tomorrow, because your opportunity might actually be within the next few hours. So it's always about taking that next step now, because they have access to so many brands, and it's about what they can see. And being in Topshop, being on ASOS has given us that that ability to be more visual and more visible to people. Like Lala Anthony just went into Topshop, picked up a jacket, and we saw her wearing it courtside at a Lakers game. So all of those things have really helped us, and it wasn't planned. It was all organic, and we always remain truly grateful for that, because it's something that people pay thousands and thousands of pounds for. So we haven't had to do that.
Awesome. And then, Dee, I would like to ask you, because you are brand director for Velvier, and aside that, you are just very experienced in, content, brand marketing, and all of this. So one, what strategies are you guys using at Velvier? And then the wider question around, what advice do you have for people in the fashion space and e-commerce space when they are trying to get their brand out there?
So firstly, I would say that, listen, you can have the greatest product. You can have the greatest product in the world, but obviously if you don't get the right branding, the right faces in the front looking at the product, then it won't sell. And on the other side of the spectrum, you can have a really bad product and spend thousands on advertisement, but if people are not liking, or it's not appealing to people, and people are not going to buy it. It's like a house. You have a mashup house. A house is gone, messed up, and you try and put it in the market, try and sell it. Yeah. No one's going to really put in bids, because obviously aesthetically it's not pleasing. So one of the key things that we wanted to do, especially when we came into the market where it's very competitive, very saturated, we were like, okay, what are we going to do differently? Obviously, one of the key things for us was that we were used to seeing black, blue, grey coats. We didn't see the very bright, colourful, out there coats. We felt like guys in particular were a bit reluctant, and we felt that we could come in and show that, listen, you can still look cool, you can still, have an impact, and by wearing bright, elegant colours on you. And that was kind of the way we wanted to come to the market in terms of how we out there who fit our aesthetics. We were keen to work with micro influencers. I think a lot of people that come into the market, of course, it's great. You want to work with celebrities, big influencers, but if you don't have big budgets, then you won't be able to obviously work with them. Yeah. And for a lot of people, they think, oh, it's as simple as sending out an email or messaging them 100 times and expecting them to respond. And I've told people, anyone that I give advice to, I always say, listen, walk before you run. So focus on those that may be obviously on the come up. They're more likely to respond to you rather than trying to, reach for the skies. And listen, there's nothing wrong. I don't want to obviously limit people's goals. Listen, if you want to try and reach the top, go for that. But I think a more strategic and effective approach is to work with micro influencers, those that are on the come up, where it will be a natural exchange of services. So those are the type of things that we did. Like, for example, we went to Paris, and it was the way what we did is managed to reach, even literally in a short space of time, we planned a trip to Paris. So like, okay, initially it was actually a personal trip, but when we went there, we were like, okay, let's turn this into a business opportunity as well. And just through a short space of time, and because we had the right aesthetics, we could reach out to key models, fashion people that were doing dope stuff in Paris. And just by communicating with them and them seeing our code, they were eager to work with us. So we've been able to organically work with the right people that fit our style.
Awesome. Okay, so when you are, a big part of getting your brand into these big stores. So Fee said that they knocked on Topshop's door 4 times. Nicholas has had some luck through just getting the brand out there and having some celebrities wear the LDF brand, but a lot of the time, forming relationships with buyers for these big organizations it's really, really important to get your line in these huge stores where they have a huge, footfall, and people can pick it up just because they've walked into a shop and they've seen it and they like it. So I'd like to ask Vera about, the best way to engage with a buyer. So, you're starting a fashion line, or you have a product line out there, fashion line out there, or even any sort of line out there. What is the best way to engage with a buyer? And what's the best way to sort of help to pitch their line to you, to kind of get it in the stores or online with these major retailers?
That's a good question. I think, as Dennis was saying, definitely walking before you run. So having somewhat of a sales or generating some sort of experience of your own first before trying to pitch to Selfridges or trying to pitch to Net-a-Porter is very, very important. Because then again, you have insight of who's buying it, and just you can pivot before you actually scaling up. So one thing that I've seen a lot of times also is that when you don't have a pricing strategy in place that accommodates a wholesale model. So what happens is when a department store buys from you or ASOS buys from you, they're buying at a wholesale price because obviously they need to be making their margin. So what some smaller brands do is they have their costs and they double it, and that's enough because they're selling to their direct consumer. But then once these retailers come in and they take their cut plus their discount, what you find is sometimes you can't make the margin, and then you're not actually able to work out the deal, because you have negative margin. And then, so costs are actually a big part of it, because if you then have your foot through the door and you have an order of 1,000 dresses, you now need to produce it.
Yeah.
And and it takes about sometimes almost 3 months before you receive your money from the retailer. So you now need to fork out the money for your production. So those are also things that I would think about. But in terms of contacting or engaging with the buyer, is finding out, where does your customer shop? Because Selfridges has a completely different target audience to Harvey Nichols. They're both in the West End. They have very, very similar brands. One may have a more local customer, Yummy Mummy, and one might have a all about that life customer. So just sending out generic emails doesn't necessarily work. You want to make life easy for the buyer. You almost want to show them, believe in your source and show them, okay, I should be in your store, sitting on this floor next to complementing adjacent to these brands. And then also finding your USP. I would sit, not necessarily in terms of competitive, but I would sit next to this brand with a more competitive price point, or I would sit next to this brand, but just more colorful, for example. And in that way, they can also envision them in your store, and then you can start the conversation. But one thing that also Fee said, which was very, very important, is that there are a lot of no's. I mean, there's been brands that I've worked with that we just thought, we've got it in the bag. Like they have to have it in, and, wouldn't get a reply. Or we've contacted about 500 buyers and there's been minimal responses. And that's how it goes. Hardly anyone gets yeses this first time around. So consistency, believing your brand, consistency is key, because sometimes they just want to know that you really want it, or they want to see that you're still going to be around season. So, and sometimes they're watching you to see how your brand is developing. Are you chopping and changing every season, or have you got something like a signature style about you? So these are the kind of things that I believe are quite key. And then it's like anything, it's a relationship. So again, Fee said that getting that feedback in, taking that on board, and developing your brand until you get it right, it's just very important. So yes, consistency is key, and as long as you believe in your brand, you keep going. And a lot of big brands struggle as well. So organic growth is definitely the best way, in my experience.
Okay, awesome. No, thank you, Vera. So, there's the route where you try and reach out to a buyer, be consistent, get your product and your line into a store. There is, Dee talks a lot about micro influencers and kind of targeting those people. Beryl's talked a little bit about, being quite organic and just wearing the brands that you are selling yourself, and then using that as a medium to attract people. Fee's talked a bit about, just knocking on doors and making sure that the products are in big stores, so that people that don't necessarily know about the brand, liked it, picked it up, and then began to know about the brand. So there's many different ways that you're all doing things. Are there any other methods, any other advice for either aspiring, e-commerce retailers or fashion, people trying to aspire into the fashion industry, and any tips and advice about how they can break in?
I would say doing things like this, like webinars, and speaking to people that are in the industry, because I feel like people are more now generous with giving more information. And more of these sorts of forums are needed, especially in our community, for people to know what it entails. Because like Vera said, when you look at the margins that a buyer wants to have on your items, sometimes you would have to pay out of your pocket if you don't work out your prices properly. So marking up by times two, or by times three is not really going to work. Even if you were not selling to wholesale boutique, you also have to work out what your time is, the value of your time, the value of the store you're putting it in. Yes, it might be your house, but you're paying rent, or you're paying your mortgage there. How much would it actually cost you if you were paying for storage? How much would it cost you if you were paying for an office space, your taxes, your duties, your VAT? Those are things that people don't really talk about, and they will come back to bite you. I always say to people, you don't want to mess with HMRC. Like, that's the last person you want to offend. As a business owner, they will lock you down. They have the power to do that. So you always have to have all of those things in check. And I say this because we've had to learn the hard way about several things. And it's just about speaking to people, wanting to know more, and definitely knowing more about these things. The fashion industry can be amazing. It can be great if you have the right product, if you have the right channels. But the stages to get in there, I don't know of anyone who has started a brand and it's like, oh yeah, it's all been rosy, and like, you know, there haven't been any issues down the way. You would find things along the way that would actually startle you, and be like, okay, you know, like duty and VAT when you're shipping in from India. You already have 32% of the value of your goods to pay before you start selling. So those are things that people need to bear in mind when you're, you know, saying you want to be in big stores. You need to make sure that you're priced properly, because when you are, then you can make money and also be able to pay all the other bills that would come with it. Because like Vera said, and she would know very well, that they don't pay beforehand. You have to find the money to fund your production. You also have to find the money to clear your goods. You have to send the goods in for free. And on top of that, there's a discount as well. And on top of that, you don't get your money for 90 days. Or 120 days now after COVID. So you those are things. And speaking to people, having a mentor, someone that can advise you, someone that has been there, has walked the road before you, is extremely important. Like, I wish I had this at the time, but thank God we're still here to be able to tell those stories and laugh about it, sometimes cry about it. But so that would be my advice: to research more, speak to people more, ask questions. You're not, even if you feel like you're bothering people, I think a good-willed person, or anyone with a good mind, would be able to tell you, no, don't do that, or do this, or I think you should do things this way.
Awesome.
Just to add, sorry to cut you off, just to add to what you were saying, Fee, as well, you never know who's watching as well. So it's always important to continue to take that step. A lot of people feel like when you get into Selfridges or Harvey Nicks, that's when you've made it. But if you haven't got great negotiation skills, you could look like you're making money, but you're really suffering in silence, because they can invest into marketing, they can invest into so many different things, where if they come to you, you're in a better position because you can ask for more things. So it is also important to do the groundwork yourself and sell on your own site if you can, because that's 100% profit. That's more independence for you to kind of branch out and really negotiate on a stronger level. So just to agree with what Fee said, don't neglect the power in starting where you are and making the most out of it. And that's one of the reasons why we set up in a platform called Rip the Runway UK, because I always wanted to be in these London fashion weeks, but it wasn't really valuing the type of talent and gifts that we had as a culture. So when we set up our own, we saw the amount of unity and amount of talent and amount of power that we have when we come together. And we don't always need to knock in the door. Sometimes we can create our own platform to come to us at the right time. So I definitely agree with you on that one.
Also, to add to what you're saying, as much as you can get into these stores, they can drop you as well. As a brand, if you're not performing, we have been dropped by brands. So it does happen where if you're not meeting the number 1 year, they will drop you for that season, for the next season, and then they might pick up later again. We've had that. So it does happen. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket. It's like you continuously have to push the brand, push your own website, push your own different avenues of selling, because putting all your eggs in one basket of one big buyer, can actually be the downfall of a brand, because they can drop you the next season, and then where do you go from there? So it's you have to remain diverse.
Really valid.
Also, just to add, because those points are so strong, because we're now talking about the finance of the brand, and a lot of new brands are using, the owners are using their own money, you know, to fund the brand. So that's why, even from the marketing, when we talk about organic, I would say exhaust all the options that you have to get free marketing. You know, social media is such a great tool, and yes, influencers are being paid. However, how much, if you weigh out the cost of paying $5,000 for an influencer versus sending out $2,000 worth of stock out for free, you know, the chances are different people will buy it. So there are just so many things to consider, where you don't have to throw money at it. And then back to the point of being dropped by stores, 100% it happens. And that again goes down to a relationship. At the end of the day, the person opposite you, whether it's your end consumer or whether it's a buyer, is a human being. And negotiation is a partnership. It's meant to be a win-win for both. So even when you've sent off all your stock, and even once you've received your money, it's not like, okay, that's it, that's their problem now. Having that relationship, you know, with them, and you know, then the buyer can reach out to you like, you know what, this has been very slow, you can swap it over, rather than the next season being dropped. Or you can have a conversation about exclusives. There are different ways of dealing with all these relationships, but there needs to be a relationship built, and there always, I think, needs to be a dialogue, whether it's from your supplier, whether it's, you know, marketing with your customer. I think trust in the relationship is very, very important when it comes to all these.
Well said. No, thank you. So, you know, we are in the midst of a global pandemic, and, you know, you are all operating in a space that is quite vulnerable and has been impacted to a certain extent. If you could all kind of give the guys that have signed in just insight into one thing that you've had to change or do differently as a result of this pandemic, please, yeah, it'll be great to hear. So let's start with Beryl.
I would say our main, I'll give each business, I'll do that. So I'll say with Nigeria, it's about, we've had to pivot in terms of our target market, what we're offering. So whereas normally our main sellers are female fashion accessories, with this time we've realized it's kids wear, because kids are growing. So parents need to buy kids' clothes. So menswear, ladies' wear has kind of taken a huge dip, but children, they're making things dirty, they're ripping things because they're at home. So that's where we've had to change. It's also the same in Ghana as well. However, with the UK, because everyone's at home and can go for walks and things like that, we've had to change from dressy, going out clothes, work clothes, to more active wear, more lounge wear, because that's what people are interested in now. They're staying at home, they're doing Zoom parties and things like that. So in our sales have dropped in terms of for luxe, evening wear, day wear. But with the Zoom parties, we find some of our clients contacting us to say, oh, I've got a quiz night on Friday. Have you got anything that you can send us? So it's changed in that respect, where people are now kind of contacting us directly to see if we've got anything different that they will still stand out on a Zoom party, because the social media has changed things. It's still all about image. So everyone still wants to look nice. So even though we're stuck at home, everyone can still see us. So we may not be going out and dressing up, but at home we still want to dress up. So each business has had to change slightly. It's also the same with Ghana and Nigeria, but more so where here we've had a bit more support from the governments. Out there they don't have that, so they have to watch their pennies more. They don't know what's coming, they don't know what's happening. So it's every country has to adapt in a different way to suit what's happening.
Okay, thank you. And then Dennis, how about yourself? How has the pandemic impacted, you know, your business, and what have you guys had to do differently?
So obviously it was such a very touchy topic, because obviously people were dying and it's a very serious thing. So for us, we decided that we didn't want to throw content and and pitch like, hey, yeah, go and buy our products, even though obviously we've got a business to run, we need to make money. So we were very careful. We didn't want to be not sensitive. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
2, we had to re-strategize on the timing, because obviously there's different products for different seasons of the year. So we've had to push back on certain seasons and kind of focus on a later season, because we can't do, obviously we've missed it because of March and we've lost a few months. So that's another thing. Also, we've been discussing in terms of content, okay, what can we do that's still going to keep people's attention, where it's going to be fun, friendly, that's going to uplift people, especially during this time.
Yeah.
So as you can see, like there are ways, like you saw what happened with the No Rush Challenge. Like people, even though people are home, look how viral that went, just from a couple creators thinking, okay, let's do something fun and cool. And that's something I would advise anyone to do when it comes to creating content during these times. Ask yourself, what's gonna bring people together? What's gonna create a positive impact? And there's so many other ways to do it. Like I've seen it, like we've seen the, what's it called? What's that challenge called where they're doing does anyone know what I'm talking about? When they're on the window or they're looking at the mirror and they swipe. What's that challenge? What's that one called?
Is it
Swipe
the same?
challenge or something?
And then it's like when they use the makeup brush.
Not the makeup one, where they're in the window and then they're cleaning the mirror and then they change into something. So that's another example where people use outfits. So they're wearing their home clothes and then they change into something else. So I'm saying there are ways, and I think during these times when obviously it's hard, I think you can create buzz and create viral content, and that can potentially increase your sales. And you saw with that first virtual fashion walk that we saw. That's another example. She put something that she rather than saying, I'm not going to do anything at this moment, she was like, you know what, I'm going to learn a skill. So she built a skill. She didn't know how to do that before, and she done something very innovative. And even whether or not people are debating whether or not she is the first or not, she done it right. And it's the thing, sometimes you can be the first in the market, but it's about doing it right. So there's ways.
Awesome. No, thank you. Great advice, Dee. How about yourself, Nicholas? What have you had to do differently, and any advice?
Yeah, first and foremost, I agree with the guys, man. Definitely useful information. For us, for ODF, very similar, focusing more on active wear due to what's happening. A lot of people staying at home, lockdown, training, and it's really been well for us. But one thing that stood out is, just like Dennis was saying, we kind of held back with the you must buy this, and we're trying to interact with our customers. We're really trying to reach out to them and speak to them. If they're dropping a comment on a picture, we're going to respond. Do you know what I mean? We haven't hit that million followers stage yet. And even if we do, we'll try our best very much so to communicate and find out what are they interested into, what's their day been like, what are they doing. We don't have to detach that emotional intelligence from our brand just because we're a company. We can also speak to them. So that's been really, really well for us. In regards to my other brand, Nicholas Kinsley, which is more of an aromatherapy, because everyone's at home, like well-being being at such a big high right now. Quick product placement.
Wait, but can we just pause for 2 seconds and let's just appreciate the product placement in this. He's got the ODF t-shirt, he's got the ODF cup. Let's put the cup up.
we got a cup as well. Why not? The fact that our products, as in the diffusers, promote therapeutic benefits, it's perfect right now for people being at home and bringing that sort of great ambiance to your home. Especially with lockdown. So we've been definitely making the most out of it, as well as it being very sensitive, where we're just taking it easy, and it's been great. So I definitely agree with what the guys have said, and I feel like it can either make you or break you, and it's all based on your perspective as a brand. And we're definitely staying positive. So that's what we've got to say. Yeah.
Thank you. And
Dennis came through. You put on the jacket quickly.
I put on the jacket. Show my products, you know what I mean?
I love that.
It is a bit hot in LA. I wouldn't wear a coat at this time, but there it is. Go and check out the website, guys.
Yeah.
No, I love it. It's amazing. But at the end, we'll give you guys a chance to tell everyone about how they can find your products and how they can support and buy. but yes, love product placement. It's very important. But Fee, how about yourself? You know, what have you guys had to do differently at Virgo's Lounge? Any advice?
Because we're an occasion wear brand, we've been hit just purely because all occasions in the world have been stopped.
Yeah.
So weddings, which we're very, very known for, parties and all of that, it took a minute to actually just come to terms with it. Firstly, our team, ensuring that they are okay, because we have a very small team and they are the lifeline of the business as well. So most of our team, unfortunately, have had to be furloughed, but we're very, very grateful for the opportunity that the country has given, the government has given us in terms of provision for employees, which is a very, very important thing, because it's such a volatile time now. We took our time to actually just decide on what we wanted to do, because it's personal, isn't it? As a small business owner, it's personal, because 1 minute you're making sales and then the next it just is literally from 100 to nothing, literally. But what we then decided to do was to slow down on the newsletters, buy this now, buy that now. We've started having more interactive sessions. So we had a buyer from ASOS come on and give a talk to people who aspire to be buyers. We've had a marketing executive come on and give a talk on that as well. We've had a wedding planner and things like that. And we've also developed our bridal bridesmaids range. So people who are forward planning for next year can start planning their bridesmaids dresses, and we're making them more customized now, because our factories are dying for work. So they will take 5 units. If you're giving 5 units, they will take 5 units now. So we've started doing things like that. We've seen a good response to that. And we've also started channeling our sales to countries that have started removing, easing the lockdown restrictions. So we've seen a spike in sales to some cities in America. We've seen a lot to Saudi Arabia and to Sweden. So in that regards, we're pushing our sales and our drive away from the UK for now, because of the sensitivity of the situation, and more towards countries that have seen the lockdown being eased there, and then just building up our influencer base as well, getting back in touch with our customers, and actually looking at our stock levels and looking at all the things that we did wrong. I think the pause on everything has allowed us see, okay, as a business, what did we do wrong in the last year that we know we don't want to take into the next phase of our lives? Because I don't think there's an after COVID, because I think it's going to be with us for a while, but the way we live our lives would change. So it's about adjusting that as well, and knowing that we won't always get things right, but we will have we now have sort of like a clear mind, without the pressures of anything like, okay, sending out orders and sending out stock and doing X, Y, and Z. We now have the opportunity to just take stock, because again, with fashion, you have so much stock, you sit on so much stock, and you're thinking, okay, what do we do with the stock we have and the stock that we had planned coming in? Thankfully, we haven't had any cancellations from any of our buyers, which has been amazing, because I know a lot of people have had cancellations, but we haven't had that. But what we're having to do is look well ahead into looking way beyond autumn winter 2021, because we just don't know what's happening. It's too soon, and going straight into spring summer 21, and looking beyond autumn winter 20, and just trying to push out all the stock that we have now, until we can liquidate and get money and invest again into the business. So it's given us the opportunity to do some in-house cleaning, and stock take, and just downsize a bit, because the overheads are still there. They're not going anywhere.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, the overheads are still there.
Awesome. And Vera, how about yourself? Any advice?
What I've noticed, or what I strongly believe, especially after Dennis mentioned Hanifa with our launch, is that purpose, or the why behind the brand, is become more and more important. So this is a time when, you know, most people are at home, a lot of people are furloughed, so they have more time to engage. So the brands that's really doing well are the ones that are really engaging, are being conversational with their customers. And even prior to COVID, sustainability and sort of ethical production has been a big thing anyway, but that is definitely going to be, I mean, ASOS, for example, if you must know, they already, you know, you have to have certain certifications or certain chemical tests. They don't sell any silk, you know, so more and more retailers are making that stand, because customers want to know that we're not, you know, our planet is already suffering. So that, you know, fashion is sadly can be a wasteful industry of, like, when it comes to unsold goods. And as Fee was saying, scaling it down, I read an article, I think a couple of days ago, that at the end of COVID, for 2020, 30% of the 3 trillion industry would have just been wiped out, and it may not come back. So, and that is not just big brands, that is small brands that are not, you know, able to survive through this. So definitely having a purpose behind your brand. And also, one thing that has within the industry always been a talk, the conventional fall winter spring summer fall winter season has for a long time. I mean, we don't really have proper winter or proper summer, you know, and that way having like classics and trans-seasonal styles, those are the things that we've seen that, well, we can't say past COVID, but are becoming more and more of a demand. And also just dresses that are or things that are multifunctional, you know. So it's just all about wastage and, you know, being mindful of how we consumers are using the items and where it's made. So everything's just become much and much more conscious. So that's something to think about also when designing and producing.
Awesome. Thank you all for your advice. So we've got a couple of questions that I want to throw to you all. So first question is from Joshua. So he says, in the context of COVID, do you think there'll be a shift away from manufacturing in the Far East? And can manufacturing be done in the UK? And if so, is it cost effective? So I'm going to throw this question to Fee first.
I think it depends on what you're doing. With the UK leaving the EU, I'm just not sure what. See, I think COVID has just come and just scattered everything, as people would say, and people are not really sure of what the tariffs would be. Again, it depends on what you're producing. So for us, we can't really produce in the UK because hand embellished garments I don't know of anywhere in the UK where hand embellished garments are made, and if they are, the cost is going to be astronomical. So I think it all depends on where you're making. I think there will be more focus on where the items are being made. Customers would want to know the history behind where the clothes are coming from, who's making them, what's happening in the supply chain, all of that. Like Vera said, people are home now more and they have time to read through things and to be more conscious about things. And I think fast fashion is going to slow down within the coming months to years, just because people are now more intentional about what they're buying. People are looking for statement pieces, because if you think about it, if an employee is furloughed or someone has lost their job, they're not really thinking about dresses or occasion wear. They will just look at what's in their wardrobe to buy. But as a brand, but there's still fashion brands that would exist and still fashion brands that would do well. So it's about making that statement piece. So I think it's about finding what sort of country would what's the word? Would complement your production style, if that makes sense, because for different items, you have different production styles. So I know knitwear and stuff, you can do a lot of that in Europe now, so you don't have to go out far. So it's about understanding that maybe things like leather in Europe, yes. I know Brazil is really good for leather, but that's a bit further out as well. And again, with COVID, you will just have to see what countries are affected and when, because if there's a second spike, there might be another lockdown as well in your manufacturing country. Then you would have, so we all have to be diverse here and really think really quickly and have multiple channels as well, because if one is locked down, then another one probably won't be. So you're able to sort of shift between the two.
Awesome. Thank you, Fee. So we've got another question from Ben Q. He says, hi guys, I'm planning to start a suit brand, and choosing the right manufacturer has been one of my toughest decisions. And like, how do I know how to choose the best manufacturer online when, when you're based in the UK? You've all talked about how your manufacturers are all over the world. Like, how does Ben start?
There are a lot of sort of trade shows, exhibitions that you can go to. I know there's one called Fashion SVP. They do it at Kensington Olympia, and you find different manufacturers actually paying to have a stall to obviously present themselves to potential clients that they can work with. So I'll definitely say that shop around. They're all over. Some of them you might have to travel. You need to actually go there and feel the tangible good itself and feel the material before working with people overseas, because it will be a lot. There's another one called Pure London, but they focus more on the female side of clothing. I don't know if you're trying to do men's or women's, but Pure London's another one. And just literally try your best just to actually try and go out there and feel it, because how it looks is completely different to how it will be when you put it on. So yeah.
Thank you. So we have another question from David. So David starts with a compliment. He says, you guys are obviously talented and I admire where you are on your journey. How have you managed the other aspects of running, your brand? So, are you doing the accounting, invoicing, tax, etc.? Any advice for me kind of approaching these elements of running a business?
Yeah, I can answer that. And for us, we have a team of 4 people, so it's easier to allocate roles. Whereas if you are a one-man band or one-woman band, it's kind of hard. So you need to utilize a number of resources to help you get things done. But there is a number of softwares, there is a number of platforms that you can use to outsource different tasks, whether you're using Fiverr, Upwork. There's a really cool tool that I use that is called Product Hunt. Basically what I do, for example, if I'm looking for accounting software, I just write accounting on the search bar on Product Hunt, and typically it's useful tools that you can use for your business. So that's a very, very effective tool, producthunt.com.
Awesome. And then I'm also going to ask the same question to Beryl, because I know we have many conversations about this.
Yeah, what I will say is, like, I'll second what Dennis said. It's about delegating, and if you haven't got the budget to delegate, there are so many affordable ways to get people to do things for you at a reasonable rate. And also sort of getting interns, students. There's a lot of students that have just graduated from universities or online courses that are looking for experience. So it's a good way to get them in. So if an accountant is just qualified, for example, you can get them in to start doing your bookkeeping and help you with that. But the key thing is, you can't do everything on your own. And that's one thing that I find brand owners have difficulty with, is letting go of parts of your business. And that's where you start to see your business suffer. So if there's something you're not good at, try and get some help. It might even be someone in your family. If you haven't got budget, you can ask around, ask friends who have experience, who have other businesses as well. They will be able to recommend someone to you to help you. Because whether you're not always going to be good at marketing, you're not going to be good at accounting, and as Fee said earlier on, HMRC, you don't want to play with them. So if you're not good with your taxes, get someone that knows what they're doing and will help you.
Yeah.
And also with things like shipping and stuff, there's so much out there now online. So even if you just Google, or like Dennis said, put searches into Fiverr and things like that, there's someone that can help you with everything. It's just about not being afraid to ask. That's the key thing. and not giving up. Just keep being resilient. Even if you get a no, keep trying.
Awesome. Thanks, Beryl. So I've got a question for Vera from Chiarika. So Chiarika asks, Vera, what's Vera's take on the wholesale market, given that many department stores are going through a tough time and closing? And given what Fee said earlier, you know, what's a good margin for retail and wholesale businesses?
It's a good question. So the retailers, obviously, just like the fashion brands, are doing their best to try to survive as well, and are doing their best to be here tomorrow. So I think that they're definitely downsizing. So some of the volume drivers that were able to place order 20,000 plus unit orders with brands will definitely take it slower and replenish as they go along. And the second part was, sorry, memory like a fish. What was the second part again?
No, the second part was around the margins. So
in terms of the margins, that actually, it's not a set rule, but it's like an unspoken set rule. So you have within Europe or international, where VAT is included, I don't want to get too um, included in the recommended retail price. Retailers expect at least 2.75% of profit margin, which is about between 55 and 60%. In the States, it's a bit different because the end consumer pays the taxes, so they can get away with a 2 margin or so, but it's about 2.75. So what you'd have is you have your cost, and you'd have your profit margin, which can really vary between 40-50%, and then you have your wholesale price. So if your wholesale price is £30 or so, you want to times that by 2.75 at least, ideally 3, and that is then the retail price. So that between the cost and the retail price is what the retailer ideally wants to see, and then they ask for discount as well. So that's why it's just so important to calculate all of these things in. And Fee was saying, like, your shipping and duties and staffing, anything, just try to get it in, because once you have your brand out there and you've got your retail price that you're selling at, it's hard to then just bump it up just to make up the margin. Because if you were selling your product at £89 and you're now £159, you're in a whole different bracket. In certain department stores, you're on a different department altogether. So it's quite important to have that in mind as early as possible.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Vera. So I had a question that was emailed in to me before the webinar from Paula. So Paula asks, so I'm looking to relaunch my footwear company in autumn of this year, but I'm honestly unsure about whether it's even a good idea considering what's been going on right now. Would people even want to buy shoes now? What's your advice on the best time to launch or relaunch a brand this year, given the current state of the market?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. There's your answer, Paula. Yesterday. Awesome. Thanks. No, it's true. Act quickly, as you've all said. Act quickly, strike whilst the iron is hot. So yeah, I think that's been the consistent message. So I have another question from Charmaine. So Charmaine says, how are you mitigating supply chain risks imposed by COVID-19? And are any of you looking to Africa as a potential manufacturing hub? I know, Beryl, you operate in this space anyway, but are any of you looking at, there's a lot of talent on the continent. Are any of you looking at the continent, Africa, for manufacturing?
Yeah, so the second half of the question about, looking at Africa as a potential manufacturer, 100%. I think it plays a great part for our ethos as well, trying to give opportunities to our own, should I say, to kind of develop and get involved in the production 100%. Again, based on our setup, it would make sense. So if we're not going for the high quantity and we just want it to be quite minimal, it can definitely work. So I just went to Ghana in Feb just before this happened. So very lucky and blessed, but I would have loved it out there anyway. but I was definitely sourcing and looking at great amount of manufacturing options, and there's a great amount of talent there. So it's definitely in the pipeline, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, and then I guess to the first half of Charmaine's question, how are you mitigating supply chain risks, imposed by COVID-19?
So I would say with that, it's more about communication. So with all of the manufacturers and the brands that we buy from, it's about negotiating discounts. So we're not cancelling our orders outright. What we're doing is changing them basically based on the consumer demand that we think we're going to see going forward.
Yeah.
And sort of reallocating stock. So obviously we bought spring summer last year, November, October time. So it's ready to be shipped to us. But what we're going to do is basically, because we're on the inside in the market, we know what's out there, but the consumer's on the outside. So they don't know that it's new stock yet or it's old stock. So we're going to hold back on some of that and relaunch it next year.
Yeah.
And then renegotiate discounts in terms of shipping and stock levels, because what you don't want is to break the relationship with your manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
With contracts that you've got that you've negotiated before. You need to communicate and explain where your business is at, explain what you're going through, explain what your customers want. And if you don't want, you can now swap products for something else. So for example, we've got this time of year for us is a big time for weddings in both in Nigeria, Ghana, and in England. Mm-hmm. So bridesmaids dresses, evening wear, occasion wear, all of those orders now, we don't know. So we have to now shift it. But what we can do is now swap it for a different product range if the brand offers it, or take it at a discount so that we both are happy. And so when things get back to somewhat the new normal, there's still a relationship there. So you don't want to break that. So that's the key. Communication is very, very key on both angles.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've got a question here around fundraising. So how did you raise funding to start manufacturing?
I can go here.
Yeah.
So, gosh, so 10 years ago, I was working in HR, and from like my salary, I was able to keep money aside. And also it was about negotiating good rates and payment terms with the suppliers. So it would be a certain amount to start production, a certain amount at once production was over and when it was due to be shipped, and then 60 days after to pay the balance. So it was just about building that relationship with them. And but I understand that a lot of people would not want to do that. If you have a viable business plan, if you have I think always start as small as you can when it comes to fashion, because I think with fashion, as a business owner, we've been in a position where we're like, that is going to be the seller, that is going to sell out, and you don't even shift one unit, and it's what you don't expect that completely sells out, and but you've not put enough units behind that style. So it's about starting really small, putting in as little as possible, but getting out the most at that point in time. So it's about, I think, start to understand your customers, to understand the people that you're trying to sell to, because it's not what you like that people would like. So it's about understanding that it took us 2 to 3 years to understand that our best-selling color was navy. It took 3 years to understand that. So because I wouldn't wear navy normally. I was like, no, that wouldn't sell. But lots of people would wear navy. So you need to look at your customer base and have a relationship with your customer base to know what sells, what doesn't sell. People want to be able to wear a bra with their dresses. People want to be able to, there's so many facets.
So many different variants,
that you have to really understand before, but it's taken us years to be able to find this out. But what I would say is, don't put too much units behind your stock. Create some sort of scarcity in that. You don't want to if it sells out, great, you can reorder some more, but then you don't want to sit behind stock and then have to mark down quite deeply so you can push the stock out. So
yeah,
I would say that it's just about understanding your customers. Was the question about raising capital, right?
it was.
So banks, when you're sure of what you're doing and you know that you have the traction, you can go to your bank. If you have an order from a supplier, you can take the purchase order to them, you can show it to them. We've had success with that, where if there's evidence that you've gotten an order, they would want to see like your cash flow statements, they would want to see your accounts, if you were to raise funds. And I know that there are other platforms as well that you can raise funds through. There's Fashion Angels as well.
There's Cornerstone Partners.
Cornerstone
Just throwing the
Partners.
plug out there. Cornerstone.
Yeah, so we started off with like what we were earning, and our family was able to like sponsor us in a way. And then also negotiating good terms as well with your buyers. And then once you have the traction, once you have the orders, you will get interest from, because people want to see that your brand can survive. So once you have orders in, then you're more attractive to investors and to banks and to other platforms like Cornerstone.
Yeah, awesome. And so just on that note, just for if any of you do have businesses and you are strapped for cash flow, at Cornerstone Partners, our investment thesis is really simple. Not only do we do equity investment, we also do debt. So we give loans. So as long as you have a product or service that's tried and tested and you're generating about £50,000 in revenue a year, come and speak to us, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. Now, last two questions, and I'm just conscious of time because we're slightly over, but question for Vera. So Vera, how do you help and advise small, startups and companies, and how can they reach out to you for this advice?
So in terms of reaching out to me, at the moment, I'm happy for anyone to email me under vera.stutzig, which is STUTZIG, at gmail.com. And for small brands, what I like to do is I like to look at the whole business, because it all networks together. So we look at your pricing, we look at production, we look at because what a lot of brands and designers do, because it's their baby, is they're just focused on what they're producing and not necessarily always about what is out there. So in terms of market positioning, comp analysis, and just all these things, just to give your brand an idea of where you stand and where you could head. For example, there was a brand that I was working with that amazing quality, made in UK and Italy with Italian fabrics and everything. And their target audience, or they believe their target audience, was definitely sort of middle class, upper class, heritage Brits. And they were just, we contacted about 700 independent and leading fashion stores, and it was just, no one was budging. And then we had to go back to the drawing board. Okay, who's actually buying your items? And it turned out that their biggest customer was in South Korea. So then also being agile, pivot I know that obviously a lot of us have our dream customer, but sometimes it doesn't align with who's actually buying it. So being agile, pivot. Okay, South Korea was the main market, and they are now doing fantastic. They're in their millions, and they are that customer is just really engaging to their target audience. The brand now has actually close to 100 accounts in South Korea and in Japan, and about less than 5 in the UK. So these are the things that we look at. And then we really map out, we have like a proposal, we map out how to launch your brand into these different markets, and what are the different stores that resonate with your brand. And one thing that I wanted to say is that leading stores always sound great.
Yeah.
However, that's not the only way to make money. The great thing about those leading stores is that it raises a profile, and obviously you have, you can tap into their market.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, because essentially wholesale allows you buying power when you're raising your orders with your suppliers, you know, whereas if you have 100 customers per month on your website, if you then get a wholesale order of 10,000 units on top of that, you can now go back to your manufacturer and renegotiate a better deal for yourself. So you can do that through, there are so many, I mean, Beryl's got an independent boutique, and some of these boutiques have better spending power than some of the quote unquote top department stores. So I've had brands that have thrived from having a lot of independent department stores that they're actually working closely with, better than someone that may have 10 department stores. So yeah, there are different ways, not one size fits all. So we really look at a holistic view of your business and then figure out how to move forward.
Awesome. So for all matters related to buy-in and strategy and all of that, we'll post Vera's email address in the chat, so that, or maybe Vera can do that so that you've got it and you can reach out to Vera. We also have one other question that I want to throw to Fee. So it says, the question is, you know, what advice can you give on, you know, for people aspiring in this space or already existing in this space that want to do more, to approach, you know, individuals like yourself and Arietta that you mentioned earlier, and ask for advice and mentorship? And just conscious of time, if we can make the response like brief and in 30 seconds,
yeah.
That's fantastic.
For myself, it would be my email, which I'm happy to type up. Arietta, I'm not really sure. I would need to message her to see if she's comfortable with it, because I just threw her name out there. So for me personally, it would be my email, which I would type up now as we speak. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, right. So look, this has been such an amazing conversation and webinar. There's, you know, quite a few questions, and I've been going through it, and I believe that some of your questions have been answered as we've, you know, continue to have a conversation. If you feel like your question hasn't been answered, please, you know, do email me, and I will reach out to the panelists and get your questions answered. So thank you so much for taking time out on a Friday afternoon, well, evening, actually, early evenings, to join us today. So Beryl, how do the guys, you know, reach out to you, shop on your different platforms? How can they contact you? Let them know.
Okay, so you can contact me via my email, which is I'll use cornerstonepartners.co.uk.
Okay, awesome.
There. My London business is called Story London. Nigeria and Ghana is Bizaz Fashion. So you can reach me we're on Instagram. We've got our website, bizaz.com. Story London website, quick plug here, is launching on the 1st of June. So it's storylondon.co.uk. So, and our Instagram is Story London Fashion.
Awesome. Thank God. Okay, so Fioia, I know you've written it in the chat, but how do the guys get in contact with you, support your brand, buy from you?
Yes, the website, virgoslounge.com. You can follow us on Instagram. It's at Virgos Lounge. And our new brand is called at VL The Label, which is like more day occasion wear.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how you can support us.
Awesome.
You can buy vouchers if you don't want to buy anything now. Yeah. We have gift vouchers.
Awesome. Okay, great. And then Nicholas, how do the guys support your brand, buy from you, get in contact with you? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. Yeah, so guys, we're all over the gaff. We're not hard to find. I'll put it in the chat. You can go to our website. If you want classic staples for your wardrobe, come to ODF Clothing. If you want your home to smell like that beautiful hotel that you haven't visited in a long time, Nicholas Kinsley, you know, we're there. Come and check us out. Reach out to me. I'm Nicholas Dex on the socials, and yeah, love. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you. And Dennis, how do the guys get in contact with you? How do they support your brand?
Yeah, but firstly, apologize for moving around. I had to sort out a few important documents. I had someone around, had to sort some stuff. But yeah, to find out the brand, check out Belvier on all the social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram. It's VELVIER. That's what you can check, or go to belvier.com. I'm going to put all the links on the chat as well. And we're actually today offering 25% discount on all our products. So make sure you take advantage of it, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Good. And I guess like the one thing I want to say that it's just beautiful. This panel is beautiful because it's all Black-owned brands. And this is something that I'm very passionate about supporting. So it's great to see that you're all just killing it and doing amazing things. And that, thank you again that you've taken the time out to, spend time with us and just be really open and honest. And really give the guys that have joined today some fantastic insight and advice. It's been greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. And for everyone that joined us today, thank you so much for signing in. And yes, we appreciate you and we look forward to seeing you at our next one. If there are any topics that you want us to, dedicate a webinar session on, please reach out to us at Cornerstone and let us know. Our socials, our website's www.cornerstonepartners.co.uk. I think it's in the chat. You can reach us on Instagram, it's cornerstone_partners. On Twitter, cornerstone_LDN. And if you want to email me, it's just chanel@cornerstonepartners.co.uk. So look forward to speaking to you guys and have a blessed evening and weekend.
And I forgot to add, the code is actually Cornerstone for the 25% discount.
Oh, yes.
Code.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So Dennis posted this. So the Belvier team, actually, they've they're doing something special today. So if you go into Belvier and you type in Cornerstone as the discount code, you get 25% off. So that's huge. So awesome.
Take care.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.